गुड इवनिंग एंड वेलकम टू गाना शॉट। गाना शॉट में आप सबका स्वागत है। Today we're going to talk of Bangladesh. It's a worrisome redux, and we all know where we are in Bangladesh. And to join me in discussing about Bangladesh, I have a power-packed panel of General Hasnain, Ambassador Veena Sikri, Professor Siddharth Ramedi, and of course General Gautam Murthy. At the outset, let me welcome all of them. Here they come. Sir,
Thank you.
good evening,
Thank you.
and good evening, madam. And it's so nice to have you on Ghana Shot for this Casa webinar. And I must
Thank
tell all of you that Bangladesh is a topic which everyone is keenly watching. Many of my viewers are very keen on Bangladesh, and I get a extensive set of views. But just to put it in perspective, what we'll do today is I'll in turn first General Gautam Murthy, after that General Atta Hasnain, then Professor Siddharth, and lastly, Madam, you give your views about 8 to 10 minutes. And I'm not in the habit of stopping anyone. I'll let you finish because I wouldn't like you to push things. Even if you take a few minutes, I'm okay with it. Right. The second thing is for the past 6 months, all of us in some format or the other have been discussing a lot about Bangladesh. So generally, I think we know a lot of the past. I won't stop you from talking about your personal experience in the past and your impressions, but I would request that let's start looking at the future. And what we're going to do with this, with our neighbor, is a point of issue. And then, of course, after that, we'll take questions, and that's how we'll go about it. If we have time, we'll take a second round of opinion, or I'll cover the second round as part of the questions, which I will pick up from the live audience. Okay, here we go. Okay, what do we think about what comes to our mind after 6 months of this monsoon revolution in Bangladesh? Some of the words which I picked up, random feelings, everything. Bangladesh, anti-India, anti-Hindu, extra constitutional government, collapsing economy, sliding into anarchy. Just consider the fact that there are train strikes, bank strikes, oil strikes, trader strikes, services disruption, garment factories not working, a whole lot of things. And when you look at Bangladesh today, it's a throwback to the 70s or the 60s in our own country, where some part of the country was always on strike. I mean, there was never a point in time in those days when strikes were not one corner of your newspaper, or if not the center. In summary, what do you say about Bangladesh today? Well, if I summarize and I put the cart before the horse, it is a country with a troubled past, a chaotic present, and probably an uncertain future. We don't know what's going to evolve in Bangladesh the way it's going. But like I said, what is it there for India in this? It's our closest neighbor, 4,000 plus kilometers of border. With this kind of a feeling coming from there, how does India tackle this problem? Because for the past 4 to 5 months, a lot of analysis has been done as to what about Bangladesh. I think we've done that. It's time to start looking at India's interests in Bangladesh rather than Bangladesh interests in the neighborhood. With this, I'd request General Gautam Murthy, sir, your take, please. Over to you.
Good evening, General Shankar. Good evening, my respected fellow panelists, and good evening, viewers. Jai Hind. Welcome to this Casa and Gunner Shot webinar that we are holding. The third one on Bangladesh, and General Shankar on his own has held many discussions on Bangladesh on a one-to-one plus with other people. This internal political turmoil that he has referred to has created multifaceted challenges for India. It is affecting our security, our economic ties, our regional influence, and this emergence of Mohammed Yunus's interim administration that has not progressed beyond a point is a foreboding of things to come. They altered the bilateral dynamics and it has huge implications for India's strategic interests. Our main security concerns are radicalization of the elements in Bangladesh who are staunchly and strongly opposed to Indian interests. And this we have seen right from 1971 onwards, despite the overwhelming victory of the Mukti Jodhas and the Indian Army in liberating East Pakistan and creating a nation called Bangladesh. Within a few years, we saw that this group was sidelined by another group that was pro Pakistan and, if I may so, pro Islamist. Now, today, we face cross border threats, we face radicalization. This dispute over border fencing has led to a lot of friction. But let us see what happens in the BSF BGB talks, which is going to be held on 17th to 20th of February. Bangladesh relies on India for power, food, raw materials, for its $40 billion garment industry, which has also taken a huge hit. And as General Shankar rightly brought out with these strikes, which is destabilizing Bangladesh, it is just plunging deeper and deeper into crisis. What we fear is that there could be a refugee influx into India again, which mirrors the Rohingya crisis, straining our resources further. We have enough of problems in West Bengal and on our eastern borders. And as we all know, that Bangladesh is completely surrounded by Indian territory. It is a question of refugees moving wherever they find space. The Yunus administration, madam, will speak about it, has prioritized ties with Pakistan and China, and that undermines India's historic influence. China's growing reliance, Bangladesh's growing reliance on Chinese infrastructure loans and naval projects complicates. And there are therefore, what is happening there is creating internal pressures within India. The India's number of our pro Hindutva groups are pressurizing the government to do more about the Bangladeshi Hindus. And of course, a thorn in the flesh of the interim leadership, interim government there is Sheikh Hasina's continued presence in India. General Hasnain will cover about Pakistan's ties with India, and ma'am, of course, will cover the rest. But we all know that right now we are not engaging well with this interim administration. Ambassador Sikri will speak about it and what are the reasons why we are there. I'm sure she has a views. And only thing I'd like to say about Sheikh Hasina's presence in India is, let us not forget, it was the Bangladesh army that organized her departure to India, and India gave her the asylum. So there are these issues, there are humanitarian concerns, there are sovereignty assertions, and the unresolved bilateral issues of the border killings, the Teesta River dispute, and trade imbalances. I'll stop over here, General Shankar, and I would request you to carry on. Overall, this is what I believe is happening, and we will have to look at strategic issues as to how we tackle this, the problem from emanating from Bangladesh. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. How do we tackle this problem emanating from Bangladesh? You highlighted or peg marked all the multifaceted issues which are coming out there. Important point you made is that the Yunus government has probably reached the point of diminishing returns. Or that's the issue. And the refugee problem and the humanitarian crisis, you made a mention. I don't know whether it will come or not, but the issue which came to my mind is this: that in 71 we could take Bangladesh out of Pakistan, but when we talk of refugee problem and all. The
Yes.
question is, have we taken, Pakistan out of Bangladesh? It's still there. That's the point which we have to really focus on. With this, General Hasnain sir, all yours.
Thank you, Jan Shankar. And thank you very much, Casa and Ganashot, for this invitation. I always love speaking on Bangladesh whenever we get a chance. And with Ambassador Veena Sikri, it's a great pleasure indeed. As I was just outlining, sixth time perhaps in the last 1 month that we have spoken together. Great respect for her views. Let me jump straight into it. You know, Jan Shankar and I did 1 or 2 programs, and Jan Shankar would recall how we got abused by
Yes.
people from Bangladesh. The maximum comments, and there were hundreds of comments on that particular YouTube video, and most of them were from Bangladesh, and very, very negative comments. That doesn't affect us, of course. We must state our piece. While I'm speaking, I'm aware that I'm being heard in Bangladesh. Lots of people are hearing me. And I want to start by telling people there and friends here that on the 5th of August, maybe a day later, I was on a particular channel. And I had friends from Bangladesh who were also on the channel. And they told me, and they were good friends. They told me very clearly, and I accepted it. They said, Ata bhai, you got it all wrong. You Indians got it all wrong. You all thought all this time we are looking for all kinds of development and this and that. What ultimately the man in the street, what everyone wants in Bangladesh is democracy. We did not get our democracy. We did not get our freedom. Right through these many years, 15 years with the Awami League, with Sheikh Hasina, we have never been free. Okay, that was the perception. I asked them 6 months later, have you got your democracy? And have you got your development? Are you heading anywhere towards it? Everything you look at in Bangladesh is down today. Promises of elections 2026. We still don't know whether that will happen at all. Look at the face that Bangladesh has lost in the world. You were riding high, $41 billion of foreign exchange reserves.
Yes.
Today you're down to $15 billion of foreign exchange reserve. That is what you have lost. 35,000 jobs down suddenly out of your fantastic garments and fantastic clothing industry. That has happened overnight almost. And it's happening, it's continuing. Many factories are closing down. The economy, you were making progress of 10% increase in the corresponding quarter in 2023. In 24, in the same quarter, you were down to 1%. That is, you lost 9% out of your progress that you were making. So I wonder what you really got out of it. And at the end of it, what do people look at India for in Bangladesh? Friendly India. We don't have an eye on your territory. We don't have an eye on anything in Bangladesh. We don't buy anything for anything which is there in Bangladesh. Medical visas are available to you there. People come, get treated here. The progress which India has made, it's not that if India has gone into a huge revolution of success. We have had our progress, we've had our success, and we are willing to share that with our neighbors. And Bangladesh is a very, very important neighbor. We've done that. But at the end of it, I wonder what you think about going back to the very people who destroyed you. The very people who were involved in operations which involved rape and genocide of intellectuals. Have you forgotten that? I come from that generation of people who were awake night after night on the 23rd of March, 1971 and 25th of March, 1971. I was awake night after night. I remember getting the news on the radio at that time. And I was in empathy and I was in sympathy with what was happening there. I didn't know that you're going to go back to the very people who were seeking to destroy you. So one feels hurt here in India. And you see the approach that India has had in this. See the manner in which our foreign secretary came to Dhaka, respecting the sentiments in Dhaka. Not a word out of place. Everything which has been stated by the government of India has been stated clearly with the correct choice of words. Not a strong word, not a strong sentiment. We know you have had a problem. We know you have had a problem. Perhaps our only fault, which while discussing with you, which we admitted many times, was that we were not in touch with every segment of the people. We were in touch with the government at that time. And that is what usually happens over periods of time. That when governments remain in power for long, it is only with the government that you get involved and not so much with the people. As such, we can have excellent relations with any government which is there in Bangladesh. So, but the fact that you are attempting to go back in time, turn the clock around and bring in the very people and have that kind of a relationship with them, a security relationship with them, for what reason is very difficult for us to fathom. If you send delegations to Pakistan, it's very good. You've sent officers to Pakistan also earlier for courses, etc. And that's continuing. But if you suddenly send a high-level delegation for some particular purpose, we don't know. We can only fathom a guess for that, nothing else. You invite an invitation, a delegation from them, and if that delegation is something which is coming to train you, is coming to cooperate with you in any way, in some good ways, it would be a very welcome thing. But when you bring an intelligence-related organization to your country from Pakistan, what should be the response of India? And particularly when you choose to take it to certain places in your country from where you know that a certain message is going to emanate, what would India do? When you send them to Chittagong or to Rangpur or places like that, we are all aware, we are all educated people. We all understand and think. We have military experience. And we know why all this is being done, to project to us. But India, it doesn't get perturbed by it. It doesn't get agitated by it. Because we know that our relationship with you goes back to it's a blood-related relationship. We shed blood together. Our army and your army, your people, the great Mukti Yodhas, all got together, and that is where things happen. We don't go into the field talking that we are the ones who got you independence. No. The moment we realized that there was a sensitivity to this issue, we stopped talking about it. I know personally at every place where I have met my friends from your great country, I have made very, very sensitive about these aspects. So to the end of the day, when the government of Bangladesh does not take it upon itself to protect the minorities, does not take it upon itself to make gestures which are essentially friendly gestures. Obviously, what do we perceive in India? And India has not taken a step out of turn. It has made sure that everything it has done today has been well above board. At the end, I have a few minutes left. I would just like to outline a few measures that I could recommend to the government of India at this particular time. I want to make sure that we continue the policy. I want to compliment the government of India, the manner in which it has handled this whole issue. It has not said a word out of place. Everything has been right. The gestures, the timings, everything has been right. For starters, I think we should remain in touch with the State Department in the United States where things are changing, right? We are aware of that the previous administration in the United States of America was perhaps involved in whatever events happened in this part of the subcontinent here. We should be in touch with the new administration to make sure that our policies are in convergence with each other. The Indian strategic community must wargame this situation. We are already doing it through various seminars, but I think something a little more focused needs to be brought together to determine the best options which we need to diplomatically execute. We must not lose contact with the elements who have been, sort of overthrown, the Awami League and everyone. We need to be friends with everyone. Someone may recommend that we should be making an outreach to the opposition parties coming into power now. I would strongly recommend we should make an outreach to everyone. The real danger is in the rising tide of Islamic radicalism, what is known as Islamism. A fuller analysis of this is needed. There are lots of people in India who are extremely well educated. I'm sure Siddharth Saab is very, very well educated, and he'll probably tell us more about this. If we have to run social media campaigns, we must not be ascetic. These should be well educated, well conceived social media campaigns which convey the government of India's correct approach to the people in Bangladesh and the people in India. The importance of securing the interests of the minorities in Bangladesh cannot be overplayed. The people of India expect the government to be proactive about this, and Mohammed Yunus Saab to stop shedding tears for some youth killed in violent protests on the 5th of August and start shedding some tears for the minorities also who have also unfortunately lost their lives. The BSF, looking forward to the meeting coming up. The BSF is remaining in close touch, handling the border situation extremely well. This aspect of the fencing is an irritant, and that needs to be resolved at the earliest. Bangladesh's economy will tank. In the manner in which it is going, it will tank. And this is something which with India should be in consultation with Bangladesh, because we cannot afford to allow the Bangladesh economy to tank. I think I will stop here because there are many other things one could recommend, but I have run out of time, and I think I've conveyed my point adequately. Thank you very much, and Jai Hind.
Thanks a lot, sir. I think you made some very, very important points, but the most important point is you sent a direct message to the people of Bangladesh and their rulers, however regular, irregular, constitutional, or otherwise they are. Right. And the next point which you put across is about, you know, uh, the people of Bangladesh are exhibiting a collective amnesia of the genocide of Bangladesh by Pakistan. And when they go back to Pakistan today, in fact, I must remind everyone, I must tell everyone, I put out a offbeat video and collecting information, little haphazard, but factual about how this entire business of genocide in Bangladesh started. It actually didn't start with a genocide like General Hasnain would tell. It started with a cyclone in 1970. And right, and I outlined that and how the Pakistanis just let people die in that cyclone without even giving them any food. In fact, they went to the extent of stopping India from giving aid to them. And now these people are going back to the same country for aid. I don't know what they'll give because that country itself needs aid, and both are in the same league as far as the suspended US aid is concerned. Okay. The next thing, sir, is as far as India is concerned, we should be aware and we should anticipate this economy tanking. And how are you going to react to a tanking economy in Bangladesh? Because that's going to have effects. It's going to be having second order effects here. And connect it up with what General Gautam Murthy said about the refugee situation. And then, of course, rising Islamism. I think it's risen quite a bit. How are you going to tackle this is a major issue. You spoke about wargaming the situation. I dare say it's not only think tanks who are wargaming the situation. On ground, also, a certain number of exercises have been carried out, skeletal exercises, but I think that message has gone across. And we have to look after the minorities in Bangladesh. I could go on and with much more, but these are the important issues. The most important issue I reiterate is a direct message to Bangladeshis who are live and spewing out some bad comments already. And more will come as we go by. Okay, with this, Siddharth, please come in and your views, please.
Yes. First of all, thanks a lot for having me here, especially Lieutenant General Kottamuti, and it's such an honor to be on this panel. So I'll try my best to contribute in any possible sense. I would like to take on the question actually that was raised initially about what India should do, and also in the spirit of, if not wargaming, then perhaps scenario building. So I've written only two pieces so far on the Bangladesh crisis. First is August 14th, which is on a think tank website called India Bangladesh After Hasina, and the latest one after Foreign Secretary Misri's visit to Bangladesh. So before I come to the scenarios, the trade-offs that are involved, the risks in, let's say, both. One is, to put it very simply, a conciliatory approach. The other is perhaps a more hard-nosed approach. I'd like to just give a sense of how I am seeing this development. And there is perhaps an emotional history to this, and there is a need, I think, for both Indians and Bangladeshis, civil society, students, scholars, etc., to maybe perhaps there's room for better understanding in terms of where each side is coming from. So, from my perspective, the way I see it is that it is indeed right that India did put its eggs in the Sheikh Hasina basket, but also there is a prehistory to that. It was not simply done out of a frivolous desire or whim. It came from our own experience in the 90s and 2000s, and that's something the Bangladesh side should also perhaps try to understand the linkages between the terror groups and the migration issue as well, and the close links between the ISI and the Bangladesh intelligence, all of that. So that left a bitter taste in our mouths, of course. The other part is that that was the compulsive reason, so to speak, but there's also the I think Ambassador Pankaj Saran said it very recently and very aptly that Bangladesh is a land of conspiracy theories, where whenever he travels there, every person has a new conspiracy theory about who's behind what, and the shadows and the mirrors. And hence, India's role has always been exaggerated in Bangladesh. In the 1970s, there was this myth that there is a secret treaty that was signed between Mujibur Rahman and India, and after the coup, they went around looking for that document, right? So similarly, there is a sense in Bangladesh that it's that Sheikh Hasina was basically India's woman there, planted there and micromanaged through her. There is a sense that India basically managed to do crowd control of undesirable elements within Bangladesh through Sheikh Hasina. But but I would disagree with this narrative as well. It's very dangerous, and it doesn't serve new Bangladesh's interests at all, and it deprives Bangladesh of its own agency. Very often, I hear Bangladesh scholars and journalists say that India should respect Bangladesh's agency, but a view in which they think that India was solely or overwhelmingly responsible for Sheikh Hasina staying in power, for all the even the oppressions or crimes under her regime, that also kind of sort of takes away from Bangladesh's own agency. After all, Sheikh Hasina was a very independent leader in many ways. She improved relations with China, at times not very much to India's comfort. And so it was not an asymmetrical relationship. That was a mutually beneficial relationship. But Sheikh Hasina also held various cards, and it wasn't just the other way around. Now, now, all this has only come into the light because of August 5th. And now there is a sense from Bangladesh that India also should be held into account, right? So that's the emotive history, so to speak. But the real question now is, what should India do? And to answer that, I think I would propose that there are two certainties about the future of Bangladesh. And this is like, for me, political science 101, which is that August 5th has created a coalition of winners who were previously losers, so to speak. And so this comprises of students, technocrats, the traditional political parties. My sense is that this coalition is already like facing strains, and over time, this is only likely to further fall apart, right? And very traditional politics will return, where everyone is competing against each other. That process has not been allowed to blossom yet because of this temporary interim arrangement. Now, now we in India may think that Bangladesh is mostly focused on looking for trouble with India, but my sense is that Bangladesh is very consumed with its own contradictions and problems. And as was rightly pointed out, the economy is a huge worry. The Rohingya issue is a huge worry. What's going on in Myanmar is a huge worry. But I think the biggest worry of all is whether they will get it right, whether the August 5th revolution will be seen by history as a strange enthusiasm which went nowhere and led to the ruin of the country, or worse, a repetition of previous patterns in Bangladesh, where you have a traditional party coming in and who takes over all the institutions, and then there's no democracy after elections, right? So there is a strong anxiety amongst all that the momentum may falter, and then and especially Mohammed Yunus, so he can't be very sure that he'll be able to implement deep-seated reforms while satisfying all the parties and in time without everyone else losing patience, especially the BNP, right? So as on the Indian side, we are very like we see all of this happening. So the only inference from this is that they will be all the parties, all the various units within Bangladesh will be consumed more by what they don't like about each other, right? But there is a negative to this for India, that in order to retain the new identity that they are still trying to build of a new Bangladesh, India will present a excellent opportunity to basically cement and solidify this identity, right? So in the sense, the more the revolution falters and struggles to make sense of reality, to make sense of itself, it will lean on various issues which has an India element. The border issue being one, the water issue was another one when there was fake news about India releasing water without warning. So these irritants will come. Now, for India, from India's perspective, uh, there is one opportunity, which is that, and this will sound very naive, but it's worth fleshing it out in the abstract, which is that the benign, slightly naive approach is this: that India will wholeheartedly engage with the interim government in terms of a signaling and narrative. We will project that we understand some of the anger and frustration that the present dispensation has towards Sheikh Hasina, and we might even understand that we may even extend congratulations or solidarity with their struggle as a democracy that's trying to find its legs, right? Then so full engagement with the interim government and an approach based on trust and a little bit of magnanimity in specific issues. We might make some concessions in the short run, of course, without making any very significant concessions which are against our interest. So this approach could be tried, and this approach has various virtues. One is that it does help stabilize the irritants as they come up. The second virtue is that it is possible that Yunus might succeed. Like, no matter how difficult it may seem, it is still possible, and it won't be wise for India to exclude that possibility. I think the main worries will actually begin when there is an elected government under a new regime, under perhaps a new constitution, right? What is not definitely not in India's interest is that this new political entity that comes up, that it comes up on a strong anti-India basis, right? Because that is structural and that is not in India's interest. So these are some of the virtues. Now, what are some of the risks? So this comes with great risk and and constraints. The biggest constraint is the irritants, right? It will be hard to earn goodwill with the new Bangladesh if that is tested and if more is demanded from you at every turn, let's say on the water issue or the border issue, then you kind of are held hostage to this calculation of you trying to change hearts and minds, right? The second thing is that India may try this conciliatory approach, but Bangladesh may not be in the mood. Bangladesh may find it insufficient to address their historic grievances or conspiracies or wounds. So that is in a way on Bangladesh is to address, in the sense that what exactly do they want India to do? It will be great to ask more and more Bangladeshi interlocutors, what is your idea of the ideal India-Bangladesh relationship, forgetting and moving aside from history for once, right? And the way I see, these are the opportunities, constraints, possible rewards, which seem very abstract right now, and as well as costs, right? So finally, in terms of so my final intervention would be this, that we are dealing with an interim government, and we sometimes tend to forget that as well, unconsciously, because this is a government with very little mandate, or sorry, political electoral mandate, right? So we're dealing with a peculiarity, right? So we can choose to bide our time and show our best foot forward, and we could prepare for the actual challenge when it comes, which is maybe 2 years down the line, a Bangladesh with an elected government, and then raising various issues, foreign policy, water especially, right? Migration, so on and so forth. So uh, things that we do during this term, the next 1 or 2 years, we should make sure that that doesn't affect the long term, the long future with Bangladesh, right? That's number one. And we should also keep in mind that even the ISI delegation visit and this and that, these are very worrying, and these hurt Indian sentiments very rightly and understandably. But these are still at the level of gimmicks in a sense, because it's again an interim government. So we should perhaps figure out in our own minds and heads, like what will be the red line and how to interpret Bangladeshi motives and intentions when it comes to this. That's, I think, my final intervention, that this is an interim government and we should focus as much on a future elected government. Finally, sorry, my last point being that, in a sense, we could also, as part of the conciliatory approach, project that we wish this interim government success, which is in a way what Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri also emphasized during his trip, very rightly so, that this idea should not go out within Bangladesh, that we are simply waiting for them, this experiment to fail. And this perception should also not go out that we are simply grieving over the loss of Hasina, and now we see no bright options within Bangladesh not in the near, but in the long-term future, right? So we could adopt a posture of goodwill and of actually wishing success, that these reforms take place and a democratic system comes up with proper checks and balances and all of that. After all, that is actually in our interest, because we do want a stable Bangladesh. And despite all the gimmicks they may do with a Pakistan or this or that, the real nightmare scenario is anarchy, chaos, and violence within Bangladesh, that leading to a huge refugee migration problem, right? So we definitely do not want that. So we have enough resources and magnanimity to wish them success, and perhaps even engage them more fully. But of course, although I do not speak about it much, but at no point of time signaling any form of weakness. That might be a delicate balance diplomatically, but I'm sure Indian diplomats know that game pretty well. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. You covered a lot of ground. I think the major points which you brought out is India and Bangladesh, have an emotive history and emotive people, and a lot of responses are emotive from both sides. You spoke of the conciliatory approach vis-a-vis the hard-nosed approach. If I may say, all the points of the conciliatory approach you have put it out. They're not naive. I don't think what you said is what is naive, because this is exactly what we are trying out. We are wishing the government the very best and hoping against hope that it will succeed, fully knowing well the contradictions which exist in it in Bangladesh, right? And another point which you've brought out, which is I think very important, is that uh, the people of Bangladesh have started to blame India for its problems. They're externalizing their issues and laying it at our doorstep after having conflated Sheikh Hasina with India. I think this is a psychological issue which I don't know how it will go out. And of course, the thing between this government and elections and reforms, whether the elections come first or the reforms come first, is a chicken and egg story which I think only Bangladeshis have to answer, and it will evolve with time. The danger in all this is this: the way I look at it, you s- you spoke of about 2 years waiting so that the present government can succeed and all that. But the problem is, can you wait for 2 years? Will the situation go bad in 2 years, right? And you can't just keep quiet all the time and keep wishing this government success in whatever it does, even if it is illegal. So at some point of time, a certain amount of hard-nosed approach might come about, but that we'll talk of later. With this, um, it was a refreshing change from all the hard-nosed veterans in this, panel, and otherwise to hear from a young researcher giving out his point of view. Thank you, Siddharth. Madam, we've been waiting to hear you. All yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to join this very good discussion. And thank you to Casa for organizing it. Gunner Shot is an excellent forum, and I've really been enjoying so many discussions with the Lieutenant General Said Atta Hasnain, and we've really carried a lot of issues forward. So, based on what has been said, let me carry the discussions a little forward also. Now, I think the first thing we have to recognize, and I must say here, that unless we are hard nosed about what is happening, we're not going to be able to get it right. It's not a question of being conciliatory, it's not a question of being magnanimous. I mean, all these are words, all these are just words that, yes, you must, the point is we have to understand why this has happened and what do the people who have done this want. So I think it is very important to first understand what is going on within Bangladesh, what is happening there, and then we have to understand how we deal with it. I fully agree with what General Syed Atta Hassan has said, that the government of India has been very patient, they have been very restrained, and they have taken the best possible view that yes, we always deal with the government of the day, whether it is Myanmar, for example. There's a huge problem, as we know, in Myanmar, but we still deal with the Tatmadaw, we still deal with the junta, because on a day-to-day basis, these are problems that arise all the time. Somebody coming across the border, going across the border. It's the same with Bangladesh. We have to deal with the government of the day because on a daily basis, there is no other option. But that does not mean that we do not know what is going on. And that does not mean that we only wait and see that it is getting better, is it getting worse, etc. So let me first, in the first few minutes, focus on what is happening in Bangladesh. And I'm basing this on the views of the people of Bangladesh. I think here, please, let us understand that it is not only the views of the government of Bangladesh. It's an interim government. By definition, it's an interim government. So talking of 1 year or 2 years, that's not a definition of interim government. If you look at the constitution of Bangladesh, interim government or caretaker government has a life only of 90 days. And that has already been doubled. I mean, we've already crossed 180 days. We will cross it on the 5th of February, 2 days from now. So I think we have to see first what is happening within Bangladesh. Now, we have to first say, was this an orderly change of events? Was this a normal change of events? It was a military coup. It was a military coup backed. I'm not even talking of the external backers right now. I'm talking about the backers within Bangladesh, backed by the Jamaat-e-Islami. And I think General Atta Hussain was completely right to talk about the fears of radicalization. Because, let us face it, the powers that want to be in Bangladesh today are the same powers that lost in 1971. You have the Jamaat-e-Islami, you have the Razakars, you have Pakistan, and you have them backed by the USA. So I think these are the losing side in 1971. They are trying to assert themselves here. I mean, I would say difference between Biden administration and Trump administration is certainly there. So I will not talk at all about the Trump administration. I'm talking only now of what has already happened. So I think that we have to look at it and see that if they are wanting to come back to power, what is it that they want? They want what they lost in 1971, which is a highly Islamized Bangladesh, and a Bangladesh that is highly connected with Pakistan, with only one objective, and that is an anti-Indian objective. Now, I'm saying this because I had seen the exactly same situation during the time that I was in Bangladesh between 2003 and 2006. There was the Begum Khalida Zia government as prime minister, and the Jamaat-e-Islami was a member of that alliance. So the Jamaat-e-Islami was in that government. And I saw exactly what they were doing as far as cooperation with Pakistan, cooperation with ISI, support to the Indian insurgent groups in Northeast, support to all the anti-Indian groupings from anywhere in the world who wanted to come and take shelter. And of course, we saw the Chittagong Arms Hall that was intended for the all dissident groups in India and maybe even in Nepal. And, we saw all this happening. They want a repeat of that situation. Except that now the Jamaat-e-Islami wants it entirely on its own. Just the radicalized Islamist groups on one side. Even BNP has been excluded from this grouping. So BNP is the one now asking for early elections, and Jamaat-e-Islami backed Mohammed Yunus and the interim government is saying, oh, we'll look at it, maybe 1 year, maybe 2 years, and so on. Now, I think that, is this acceptable to the people of Bangladesh? We are seeing more and more a feeling arising in Bangladesh that this interim regime is doing exactly what they are accusing Sheikh Hasina of doing. That means they're accusing her of no democracy, and there is no democracy now. The media is completely gagged. We do not know. It never comes in the media what is happening. They're accusing her of, enforced disappearances. There are enforced disappearances now. They're accusing her of gagging the media. The media is completely gagged now. And they're accusing her of there's no economic growth. There is completely no economic growth now. So I think that we have to see that, is this sustainable? In my view, it is not sustainable. In addition to the fact that this government is completely unconstitutional, they have sworn themselves in on a constitution which does not allow for an interim government. And even if you assume they're saying that, yes, the Supreme Court gave this verdict, there is no evidence of that verdict, no copy of it at all. And to say that, I think I've always maintained that this question of putting eggs in one basket is not a valid argument at all, because we closely worked with Sheikh Hasina because she respected India's red lines on security. And because of I see the change between 2003, 2006, and what happened after Sheikh Hasina got elected in 2008 onwards. A complete change. We had peace in the Northeast for 15 years, which allowed the Northeast to be developed, to have, development objectives instead of only security concerns. So all this was happening for the mutual benefit of the people. The people of Bangladesh benefited enormously. They had 6 to 8% growth for 15 years, got them out of the LDC status. And that is what should continue now. Economic growth, I'm not talking of Sheikh Hasina. Economic growth and democracy means elections should be held, as the BNP says, within the next 6 to 8 months. Now, if this interim regime is not able to do it, just today there's an article in a very leading Bangladesh journal which has said, well, if this government cannot do it, if this government is only talking about reforms, they're not mandated to do reforms. No interim government is mandated to do reforms. Reforms can only be done by an elected government. So that task has to be left entirely to an elected government. Whether it is police reform, constitutional reforms, economic reforms, there is no way this government can do it. So talking about it is completely unnecessary, and it in fact distracts attention from the purposes of going ahead with maintaining law and order. There is no law and order in the Bangladesh economy today. This is again something that they accuse Sheikh Hasina of, but there is no law and order. There is no inquiry into how did the 1,000 policemen, how did they get killed? But they have given themselves indemnity. We don't even know, many people don't know, that this government, interim government regime, has given themselves indemnity from anything that happened before, including in the run-up to the violence. So I think that the newspaper, the media report that I saw today said, look, if this government cannot do it, then we need a new caretaker government who will take 90 days to organize the elections and bring in an elected government as soon as possible. I think in India's own interest, this is what is necessary. Because I agree that when Vikram Mishri, that was a wonderful gesture, very important gesture of Vikram Mishri's going there and asking them what's going on and saying that India is willing to talk to you. But he did describe the talks as frank candid and constructive, which means he spoke his mind. And according to newspaper reports, he said, we will deal substantively only with the elected government. And this is all, waiting. It's a wait and watch period. Now, if we are going to deal substantively only with an elected government, then it's in our interest that the elected government comes in as soon as possible. So that should be our aim right now, to see how quickly and how smoothly maintaining law and order and having the elections can go hand in hand. This government has not been able to maintain law and order. There's no way that they can be maintained anymore. The police is not there. The army has been given magistracy powers and police powers, but they're not exercising it, because when the chief of army staff was in the USA, he was told that anybody, taking wrong action will not be allowed to go for peacekeeping. He was there in the month of October before the elections took place. So let us be very free. Let us be frank among ourselves that I don't think the main reason why I say, in addition to what I've said just now, why it is increasingly difficult to deal with this government, that they have shown no interest in dealing with India. No interest at all. I mean, I have not seen a space of time of 6 months where this government has not made the slightest effort to come to India, to visit India, to understand what can be done between this interim regime and India, to understand Indians' concerns. The issue about the border that General Hassan talked about is very serious. These are all issues on which agreements exist between the governments of India and Bangladesh. Now, let us not talk, please, about Sheikh Hasina or not Sheikh Hasina. A government-to-government agreement remains as such. If government A wants to change that agreement, let them say so. Then we talk about it. But just saying that, Sheikh Hasina concluded all kinds of wrong agreements and we will not honor them, we want, a situation where there is mutual, of course, there is mutual benefit. You think 3,000 Bangladeshis coming to India for studying, you think 1.5 million Bangladeshis getting visas and coming for medical, for tourism, for pilgrimage, for business. I mean, this is all in the mutual interest. And Bangladesh's exports now crossing 1 billion, heading for 2 billion. These are all very important positive changes. So we would like these changes to continue. If this government, it seems, has not shown the slightest interest in dealing with these changes. They have cancelled the visit of the judiciary, which was scheduled to take place. For 6 months, they have cancelled the BSF meeting. I'm very glad it's now going to take place later this month. They didn't even come for the very ordinary kind of but very meaningful celebration of 150 years of the meteorological department, where it was existing. It came into being when India, Bangladesh, Pakistan were all under the British colonial rule. But we are celebrating an event. You can send 2 people to participate. They didn't come. And on the other hand, you see the grand revival of the strategy which I have seen at work between 2003, 2006, which is the Pakistan-Bangladesh cooperation, and talking now of military training, of putting major generals there, of the cargo ships which have brought in strong explosives with Cambodian marking, and the cargo ships from Pakistan which have brought in Jaish-e-Mohammed cadre, which have melted into the population, whether they're headed for the northeast or somewhere else, we don't know, but this is exactly what used to happen earlier. So what I see is that these security concerns cannot be brushed under the carpet. These security concerns are the exact concerns that Sheikh Hasina's government was very careful in looking at, while doing all the mutually beneficial issues like trade. And I'm not saying that all issues are solved. Of course, you need to talk on water resources. Of course, you need to talk on border management, but at least honor the agreements which are there. And I think that there is no indication of any interest in honoring these agreements. In fact, when the Turkish delegation was there in Bangladesh, I saw a report in the Bangladesh media which said that the Turkish delegation assured Bangladesh of replacing everything that India was giving to them. So obviously it was based on a request from the Bangladesh interim regime. So I think that since we have such a close integral relation with Bangladesh, 4,000 kilometers border, very porous border. We know the situation of minorities has been very, very serious. It is not something which India is saying. For the longest of time, the Bangladesh media, including very senior editors whom I know well, kept saying, oh, this is propaganda by the Indian media. Nothing has happened. Nothing has happened. And one strong visit by Foreign Secretary Mishri, the very next day, the government of Bangladesh said, oh, I'm sorry, actually there were about 80 incidents and, we've arrested some people. So they know it's happened. Blaming the Indian media is a fake narrative. And I think fake narratives don't help good relations. But look at the interest. The people of the minority community this time have taken a unique position. the first time in 53 years, that we are not going to leave Bangladesh. This is our country. We are citizens of this country. We want our rights. And they have given a 8-point demand to the government of Bangladesh, which has been totally ignored by the interim regime. It's not even been mentioned in the media or talked about. Very simple demand, but nobody seems to be interested in dealing with them. So I think that we have to realize 6 months is a long enough time. There is no scope for any more waiting and watching, for any more, magnanimous situation where no matter how bad the situation is, we still overlook it and so on. We have to really take a very hard-nosed look at the situation and do the necessary scenario buildings that we are looking at. I think the situation has been made much more serious by what is happening in Myanmar. The Arakan army has been able to win over the Myanmar army, and the entire border, of course, between Bangladesh and Myanmar is a short border of 300 kilometers or so. That's now manned by the Arakan army. There is no Myanmar army there. And even the India-Myanmar border, all the border in the Rakhine state and much of it in the Sagaing division also is manned by the Arakan army. So I think we have to be very, very careful about what it means for the situation on the border, what it means for the further illegal infiltration of Rohingyas into India. And these are very serious considerations that we have always been looking at. So I think that we have to look at a situation where the people of Bangladesh get what they want. They are the ones who are saying no democracy. They're not going to last for 2 years without democracy. I think there is no way. In fact, if you support this interim regime in encouraging them to stay for 2 years without democracy, you will be getting the same complaints from the people as they were making with Sheikh Hasina. That we are sort of allowing them to not have elections, allowing them to have whatever they want, and allowing such a complete radicalization. Even women's football has now been banned in Bangladesh as of last week. This was again one of the reports from the Bangladesh media. So I think that these are serious issues about what is it that this government wants. They have clearly said they want a khilafat. The special advisor to Muhammad Yunus, who is now actually an advisor in the government. He's been sworn in as an advisor in the government. He is defined by Muhammad Yunus himself as the mastermind behind the events. And in New York in September, Muhammad Yunus said that this did not happen on its own. This is a meticulously planned event. And here is the mastermind, Mahfouz Alam. And this is the same Mahfouz Alam who has said in his tweets, we want a khilafat, we want to have Sharia law, and we want to take over large parts of India. We want to take over West Bengal, we want to take over the Northeast. I mean, they're drawing new maps of India. So I think that there are some things which can be treated as non-serious, but there's some things which you have to take cognizance of. So I think the time has come to take cognizance of what is going on, to take cognizance of what the people of Bangladesh want. They are equally unhappy now. They're perhaps much more unhappy now because they feel that their hopes have been again disappointed. And many people have mentioned about the anti-Indian. Yes, there is a huge, vicious anti-India propaganda that is going on, and we should be doing our best to look at that as well, because I think even the people of Bangladesh realize that how many day-to-day needs, how many day-to-day interactions can happen only with India, and how India has won. Even as we speak, we have sent 50,000 tons of rice, we have sent further consignments, and we're ready to do even more, much more, on a humanitarian basis, on a day-to-day basis. But we must immediately make sure that elections are held in a very short period of time, and that interim regime that has proved itself, first of all, unconstitutional and illegitimate, but has proved itself incapable of tackling the situation, can no longer be trusted to organize elections. I'll stop at this point and happily answer questions.
Thank you, madam. Thanks a lot for your intervention. I think you made some very, very important points. And the first point is we need to be hard-nosed to get it right. And the consolatory period is over. 6 months is a long time. It's twice the time of 90 days, which is given in their constitution. And I felt right from the first day they were unconstitutional, but you've given them 90 more days, which is quite a bit. All right. This is not only constitutional, it is highly illegal also. And when you look at it, they're in major problems with their tanker strike, with their, bank strikes, and their cleansing of universities. Today, the college students in Bangladesh are fighting with each other. So the situation is actually becoming worse. And my own view is if this goes down the line further, we are sliding into anarchy and things might go a little out of control. In fact, I won't say little, a lot out of control. Yeah, uh, yeah. There's no trust in India, and this trust in India, or lack of trust in India, will only compound itself as things go along. Uh, Another important point, I think this is something which is critical for us to understand the Bangladesh which we are seeing is the Bangladesh which existed pre-71, which existed during Khalida Zia's time. And we need to deal with it in that fashion, right? And that means a lot of issue of security and how to deal with it. You brought out an important point of we should ensure that the election take place in time. I'll get back to you on that. Uh, right. So with this, I'll take too many questions which have come up uh, in in the audience. A lot of people have put out their views. I would just say, please absorb the views. I'll ask each one of you a question and get the right things out of what you said. I'll go first with General Hasnain. Sir, you mentioned, I mean, what has come out today is that in our talk, there is a security situation developing around Bangladesh. Whether you call it refugees, whether you call it the Pak ISI and Bangladesh combined, who have melted into the border and who might infuse in across. There are other issues also. What are the security steps we should take uh, to handle the situation without making it too militaristic? Because
Thank you, Jan Shankar.
I'm not saying too militaristic because, as we all know, there's no military option fully in Bangladesh. In fact, there's no military option at all. But there's a
Thank you, Jan.
security issues. Yeah, please, sir.
Thank you, Jan Shankar. I think that's a very good question because you've actually brought in a lot of things from what is being mentioned in the comments, which I can see on my right. But most of these comments are obviously out of context. People are not getting right. And they are essentially trying to target each other here and there. But I think you've hit the right question, absolutely. And we have spoken about this often. Ambassador Veena Sikri knows my views on this. We have spoken at the India Habitat Center in a couple of seminars on this. I always start by saying Pakistan never left Dhaka. When 93,000 prisoners were taken away by India after 1971, all of us, the rest of the world, imagined that now India had nothing to do. Now there was total peace here, and this eastern flank, there was no worry at all. Everything now shifted to the west. That's not true. There were a lot of worries. And we knew that Pakistan continued its interest there. It left behind a lot of people, which were the so-called famous Bihari Muslims, as they were called in those days. Many of them remained there. Many of them have tried to come away through the Indo-Bangladesh border, and we've seen how many of them we have captured on the western borders while trying to get into Pakistan at that time. Right? So, I mean, a Pakistani interest was always embedded there. That has come alive today. What we can see is that has come alive. They are looking at opportunities. Those opportunities have not translated entirely into situations which they can exploit yet. You see, under Sheikh Hasina, or whatever you want to say, under the government of Bangladesh, over the last 15 years, a lot had been achieved in terms of security. The traditional things that we were always looking at, the possibility of, support to insurgency and turbulence in the northeastern states, the kind of sanctuaries given to many of the separatist leaders who came in from the northeast inside Bangladesh, support in terms of material goods, psychological support, political support. The typical proxy war kind of things were happening in the past, but all that came to an end over the last 15 years. Can that all start again immediately? To my mind, I think it may be a little premature on our part to sort of say straight away, yes, everything is going to go wrong here. No, not necessarily. I still have a lot of trust in the Bangladesh army. I have worked with them. I find that although there may be a lot of rogue elements within, the number of good, stable people, sensible people who know what is good for Bangladesh outnumbers those rogues completely. And therefore, we can still do good business on security with Bangladesh to ensure the situation does not deteriorate. Many times people feel tempted to talk about the large Bangladesh army, 10 division army. I do not like to bring this issue up at all, because I do not want to send a wrong kind of signals on this to say that we fear anything by the Bangladesh army as far as we are concerned. I've given this example many times in many of the talks I've given at the India Habitat Center of the IIC, that we call Pakistan Nark in our war games. We call China Chandal in our war games. The forces of hell, the forces of the devil. We never have a name given to Bangladesh. We have always kept Bangladesh right up there on a pedestal as a friend. And we jointly created the state, the country of the nation. And we are proud of that fact, and we are proud of our relationship with the Bangladesh armed forces. So I don't think at this stage yet there is anything worrisome as such, except the fact that these opportunities are being sought by Pakistan. And I do not like to see that happening. I don't want to see a manifestation of this beyond this state. I would have been very happy even if this ISI delegation came to Dhaka and went away, it was still okay. Coming to Rangpur got my goat. Coming to Chittagong left me in a slightly disappointed state, because these are subtle messages being sent to us. We all recognize it. We know what is where the vulnerabilities are, etc. We all know it. So you are trying to send us a message through that. That is not good. That's not something which I appreciate. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. You brought out very important points, but I'll sum it up when I go next to General Gautam Murthy. But madam, I'll get back to you. You spoke of a new caretaker government. This government, interim government, has lived its course. You spoke of a new caretaker government and how quickly we can get an elected government which is to be brought in. Who'll bring it in? Who'll bring this new caretaker government? And do you see USA taking interest in it? Or do you see USA and India and maybe other countries, maybe even from ASEAN or wherever, putting this structure in place? Because I don't see any force within Bangladesh which is in a hurry to put a caretaker government in place. It has to be a counterforce. So your views, madam.
No, well, I think first of all, one has to recognize that the Bangladesh army is the real source of stability and authority in Bangladesh. So that is the first thing. In fact, there was some talk in the media that General Worrisome may be coming to India, and well, I hope he does, because that will give a very good opportunity to discuss and to see what is happening. So I think I do agree with General Hassan that one has to have faith in the Bangladesh army. There are a lot of pressures. Islamization is rampant in the Bangladesh army, and the very fact that the Jamaat-e-Islami was able to operate the way it did through the Bangladesh army points to the fact that there is a schism in the Bangladesh army. That's being talked about, that's being openly written about now. That is there. But I still think that the Bangladesh army under General Worrisome is a source of stability authority. They played a very strong and positive role. There is also the president of Bangladesh, which is a very strong constitutional position. And we must all remember that actually one of the first things that this group and the unmanaged students group, so-called students group, because as we know, as I said, that this was neither a students uprising nor was it spontaneous, but those students groups still try to even topple the president. But by that time, already the dissatisfaction with the interim regime had set in, and there was no support for that. And the army said, no, we're not going to have. The BNP said, no, the president is a constitutional authority, and the president must be allowed to remain. So I think these are all matters which ultimately the people of Bangladesh within will decide. But I am pointing to the fact that the interim regime, the caretaker regime, can only be exist for 90 days. If it hasn't, it's not been able to do it. There's no question of talking about reforms and this and that. Think about what else to do. This is something which is within Bangladesh. There is, I'm sure, a lot of thinking going on. What President Trump's government will do, I think we will know. There are all the people are getting confirmed, and the hearings are going on, and a lot of discussion in State Department. We have had discussions already. Our External Affairs Minister was there for the inauguration, has already had bilateral meeting with the new American Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and he has also earlier met the new National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz. So I think that these are all matters which are certainly at the forefront of concern. I cannot say what is happening in all these discussions. I think one cannot at all try and speculate on that. But I do think that this situation of what is happening within Bangladesh is well known. The way it is deteriorating, the way the law and order is non-existent, the way the economy is tanking, jobs are going, people are using jobs, the certainty of travel is going, investment is not coming in. Looking at all this, investment is not coming in, growth would certainly be only in the region of 1% or 2%. So I think that these are matters which are of great concern to the people of Bangladesh. So I am very confident that there are mechanisms, there are ways that you can get a interim caretaker government to look at the 90-day period and have elections after that.
Yeah, thanks a lot, ma'am. I think what you said is absolutely on the spot. For those of you who are watching this podcast, I must say, about 10 days back, we had a discussion. I had a discussion with General Rajiv Narayanan, who served for 1 year, or rather, who did his staff college for 1 year in Bangladesh. He lived there, and he lived there with the troops, and had a lot of interaction. And he's kept in touch. And what Madam is saying is absolutely right. The Bangladesh army is still neither this way or that way. In fact, if there is anything, what is coming out, it is still seeks stability and a democratic way of doing things. And if one reads the interview of Wakar Zaman, which he gave with Prathamalo, a lot of meaning is there and it comes out in that. And then the president of Bangladesh, we must remember, was appointed by Sheikh Hasina, and he's a Awami League man. And politically, his leaning is towards that. And he's raised a lot of constitutional issues. So both these things put together, and the fact that USA it will come out with its own, I wouldn't say with its own plan for this particular area and its views. And the fact that, as Madam said, our External Affairs Minister, Dr. Jaishankar, and Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, have discussed Bangladesh. Why this is important is it has found resonance within Bangladesh. Bangladesh people are talking as why are they talking about it? So there is some counter movement on, and we'll see how it goes. But like what she said, I think we need a new way of thinking in Bangladesh, and we need a new way of ruling in Bangladesh. I'll get back to the security question. Then Gautam Murthy, sir, one way of looking at securing the whole situation is looking into Bangladesh, getting a new caretaker government in, doing whatever you have to do in Bangladesh from a security perspective. But equally, we have to do something on our own side, right? Maybe something like stopping smuggling, build up your IS setup, and things like that, and strengthening your own postures. Could you give a brief outline as to what all can be done on our side of the border?
Firstly, I think this has been a very fascinating and wonderful discussion that we've had, and lots of views have emerged. Now, what can we do? One of the things is, I'm sure our BSF have a laundry list for the Bangladeshis when they're going to meet them later next week. That is going to set the tone, and this meeting has been postponed over the past few months, and finally it is going to fructify. We hope that they will brief them correctly on what we need to do. This cattle smuggling has been a problem. People crossing over has been a problem. Bangladesh, she's have always been denying the fact that why should our people cross over when our economy is doing well? But migration being what it is, you do find people crossing over. So one is the border fencing. The other is to have our sources from within Bangladesh giving you the right inputs, giving you the proper inputs. What does India want basically? India wants a stable and peaceful Bangladesh. Let no one have doubts, including the number of Bangladeshi viewers of your channel. Let them have no doubts that all India desires is a peaceful and stable Bangladesh. As General Atta Hasnain brought out, we have no territorial demands. We have nothing. We just want a stable country. And for that, we need to know what is going on there. We cannot allow forces of extremism to take over. Bangladesh, and somebody has remarked, cannot afford to go the Syria way. And
Yeah.
General Hasnain has warned us, he's spoken so much about political Islam and Islamization, where the religion gets deeply embedded into politics and takes on an extreme form. Do we want another Afghanistan on our border? Do we want another Pakistan? These are the issues we must look at. So, all I'd say is that we need to know what is going on, and for that, I'm sure there are people on ground who are giving you. And in today's day and age of social media, moment anything happens, it's all over. You just need to verify whether that is true or not.
Yeah.
So that's about all that I
Yeah.
will say. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. Uh, Wise words. Uh, Siddharth, being the youngest on this panel, I'm giving you the last word, right? And do you have a reason to believe that your naive approach might have to go into the hard-nosed approach sooner than later?
Yes, that is my worry, and well, I identify as a realist actually within my school of thought. So I'm usually the last person to ever prescribe a conciliatory approach. But in my scheme of things, it's better to try it out fully and then have no regrets than to be half-hearted in both. In a sense, it is almost a riposte to the Bangladeshi argument, which is that you need to understand our point of view, you need to understand what we've gone through, we want relations to be more respectful and equal. And in my point of view, there is no reason why India wants an unequal relationship necessarily. We want a mutually beneficial relationship, but it's worth a try. And in international relations, you have various cases where, again, great powers, rising powers, do try the conciliatory approach first. And when they are decided in their minds that okay, that this was tried, then they go for the other option, and that's usually a very optimal situation to go about as well. And directly to your question, yes, I do sense that possibility that the conciliatory approach might not work. If anything, the odds are against it in a way. So we'll have to leave it to fate to a certain degree. And also, yes, that the hard-nosed approach, the less sanguine approach, I'm sure India's security community, military leaders, everyone do have that in mind. As you've said, there have been war games, some physical, some on tabletop, or all of that. So that part I'm not worried about at all. That India does have, in a way, let's say, options and all that. But my only point of view then is to is again, I'm in agreement with the present government's approach, and it is very pragmatic. It has been very patient. It is willing to give Bangladesh a long rope. Of course, there are odd exceptions now and then. For instance, we saw in December, but that's equally to each side is to blame, let's say. So the Indian government approach has been patient and forgiving at times. For instance, underwater, the fake news regarding the water, all of that. All I'm suggesting is that the same approach can be taken forward a little bit more, just to see what will be the reaction from the other side. It's always
Yeah,
best to know
got it.
you're doing something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
could I add?
thanks a lot. Yeah,
Can I,
please,
can I?
madam. Yeah,
No, I
yeah,
just
yeah.
wanted to say,
Please come in.
when we talk about a hard-nosed approach, I'm talking about first a hard-nosed appreciation and understanding of what is going on there. That's what we have to be first hard-nosed about. Because I mean, a wishy-washy approach to what is happening there,
Yeah.
ignoring what people are saying, that's the thing. And secondly, how to deal with it, which means again a hard-nosed approach to dealing with it, all things. But I think that the people will seem to definitely be in favor of elections, because that's what they've been waiting for, and that's what they kept saying. In the first 3 months when we were talking to all the on the various channels, everybody from the Bangladesh side kept saying, "Oh, but we've never had proper elections. The young people of today have never voted in proper elections. Please give them elections." And now they're talking about not having elections at all for 1.5 years, 2 years or so. So this hard-nosed approach on appreciation of what is going on, this is very important. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so, ma'am. Because a lot of ground has shifted in the past 6 months. It
Yeah.
was not as it was earlier. We have to keep our fingers on the pulse and
Yeah.
see what is happening in Bangladesh. That's why I brought that issue of tanker strike and train strike and all that. That brings them into a lot of problems. Their day-to-day things are getting affected. They don't have electricity. Power cuts, timing has gone up. There are a lot of issues which
Yes.
we have not touched upon, but
Yeah.
they are there. These realities are there, and the hard-nosed approach is the first is you need to have a headed approach as to what's happening inside, and then take actions
Yeah.
accordingly. This has been a fascinating discussion over the past 6 months, as we've been discussing Bangladesh. There's a change which has come about. Earlier, we were empathetic to what's happening in Bangladesh. We were actually hoping that things will come out and they will settle into something good. And by 6 months, election should have been done, and Bangladesh should have be up on its legs and starting to run with due support from India. That was our hope, but that's not happening. And that's why we are discussing all this, and that's why we are still getting, if you see on the right side, a lot of emotive, responses. And one has
True.
got used to seeing these responses and not reacting to them now. That's a dangerous situation. When two countries and two peoples don't react to each other logically, then we are in a difficult position. Anyway, I think this discussion of ours will continue in time. Uh, I must thank all of you for your wonderful views, something new I've learned today. And I must also thank all the audience who come and emoted, because knowing the emotions is part of how to deal with them. With this, sir, General Gautam Murthy, sir, over to you. Please
True.
do the honors.
Thank you very much, General Shankar, Ambassador Sikri, General Hasnain sir, and Siddharth Ramedi for your wonderful views. Although I was a panelist, I think I have learned so much more listening to all of you and hearing your views about Bangladesh. We just need to keep steady, keep looking in, and pray and hope that Bangladesh stabilizes sooner rather than later. Thank you all very much. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.
Right.
Jai Hind.
Jai
Thank you.
Hind and good evening to everyone.
Yeah, good evening. Good evening. Jai Hind.